As we grow older, all of these ways of grasping the Bible remain part of my repertoire, but I believe they need to supplement and complement each other in order to get the most from any reading of biblical texts. This is something I attempt to do throughout this book. The narrative stage. As a child, along with my siblings, I was dutifully dispatched to the Baptist Sunday school next door to our home by my religiously indifferent parents, in part to keep up appearances, but also, I suspect, to get us out of the house so they could savor a second cup of coffee and peruse the Philadelphia Inquirer. Seated in Sunday school on hard wooden chairs under the tutelage of a series of well-intentioned but only sketchily informed lay teachers, I heard the stories of the Bible. I found them fascinating, if frequently not quite credible. There was the nasty fight between Cain and Abel, and there was the aforementioned Delilah, who entrapped a muscular Samson with her sultry charms. There was Noah and his menagerie aboard the ark. I especially liked the one about David, the cheeky little kid who slew the big bully. And there were also all those stories Jesus told, the parables, and the ones people told about him. We did not just hear these stories, we also sometimes acted them out. As a child, I often pulled on a bathrobe, wrapped a towel around my head, and gripped a stick in my hand as a character in a nativity play. We have seen a star in the east. When as a teenager I began to attend church, mostly to sing in the choir, I always noticed the huge black leather Bible that lay open on the varnished pulpit, its gold edges glistening and its purple page marker dangling. It was the biggest book I had ever seen, so I knew it must be important. Sometimes the preacher read from it, but more often he read from a much smaller one placed on top of the big one. What little I remember about the sermons I heard from that pulpit is that they were made up mainly of anecdotes and allegories intended to illustrate the points the preacher was making. Years later, I still remember many of these illustrations, but hardly any of the points they were supposed to dramatize. For a kid in a church that had no formal creeds, the Bible was not a handbook of doctrines. It was a compendium of stories. And for that, I am grateful. Those were the days before the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the practice of reading the Bible in public schools was unconstitutional. Consequently, I heard the Bible read every day for years. At that time, state law mandated that 10 verses of the Bible be read aloud, but without commentary, so that is exactly what our teachers, and later the students selected for the task, did. What we heard 90% of the time were psalms from the King James Version. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Psalm 24, verse 9. I liked the cadence of the words, but what king was entering, and where those gates were never explained. Still, it is remarkable how, after so many years, those verses still resonate through my synapses. If at Sunday school I encountered the Bible mainly as stories, in the public school it spoke to me primarily as poetry. In my teens, I became more involved with our small church, was elected president of the youth group, and as such was even invited to preach once when the pastor, along with nearly everyone else in the congregation, was on vacation. As a high school student, and as I began to read the Bible on my own, I began to realize that, as endearing as the stories I was learning were, they represented only a carefully culled sample drawn from many more, some of them apparently deemed not suitable for Sunday school, such as the ones about Noah's drunken nakedness or the prostitute who concealed Joshua's spies. It also occurred to me that the lay people who taught us had no inkling, and maybe no curiosity, about when and why any of these stories were first told. In short, the story stage of my introduction to the Bible was also largely a literal stage. When I went to college, I majored in history, but took a couple of religion